Data modeling is a hot topic now. Who would have thought that? I mean, it was like, I don't know, some people thought it was the most boring thing on this planet. 2 years into the modern data stack, most of the people recognize that just having a tool to stitch together SQL queries doesn't give you scalability, doesn't give you sanity, doesn't give you a setup that can easily be extended without breaking other things. And maybe your cloud computing cost increased significantly over time. Back to data models. And today I will show you some kind of data model that is quite nice for specific kind of use cases, mostly when you work a lot with events. And so, stay tuned. Hi, my name is Timo. I'm doing a lot of data stuff, and most of the time I'm just looking for new things that can solve problems and challenges that I experience during the different kind of projects I'm doing. And I was looking for a long time for some kind of ideas and approaches that can help me to create data models that make my task to analyze specific kind of use cases a lot easier. And I will show you what I found, what were my problems, and maybe it's something that is helpful for you too. So let's look into this. This is basically a presentation that I also did on the summer community days from the Operational Analytics Club. This is just a re-recording and in a different kind of setting. But so you can also watch the original talk, or you can just stay here. I want to make events first-class citizens in my data model. And I will explain in a second why I want to do this. Let's do a little bit of history, or let's list my history with data models. I started out, as most of the people, I guess, do, or maybe still do, and with the classic star schema. I did data models for e-commerce cases. And in e-commerce, we wanted to create mostly the classic e-commerce reporting. So often like the impact of different kind of marketing campaigns on orders. And so in the end, the star schema worked pretty fine for it because we didn't really had so many kind of facts tables that we had to take care of and a lot of dimensions. And so like star schema worked really well. And so we can create really good reports out of it. The problem with the data model started a little bit when I was venturing in different areas. When I did a project for a software as a service company, which was in a, let's say, kind of pre-product market fit stage. And they still had to do a lot of experimenting, so to really find out how to activate people and so on. So which classic product analytics use cases? And so usually like in product analytics, for me, like my go-to would be funnels and cohorts. And I was trying to do this also like with this kind of model, and it worked, but it took really long of time to do that. And it was not really straightforward. And especially like because we wanted to do different kind of funnels and different kind of angles on the data. So it was not really good for it. And then I felt something like, okay, maybe there is a better approach to it. And so this is very simplified in a way. So let's say star schema works really, really well in the classic business reporting cases, the BI cases. And these kind of reports all have kind of a similar shape. So they often have a lot of aggregated or some relative KPIs. So be it like conversions, purchases, visits, or then a conversion rate from a visit to a purchase. And of course, like timeline. So all these aggregated numbers you usually have on a table, usually like on a day granular level. Speaking in star schema, you have a few facts, so like visits, purchases, and potentially a lot of dimensions because this makes the breakdown. And star schema works really well for that. In product and growth use cases, you work a lot, of course, in the final report, you work a lot with funnels and cohorts, but in the end, it's really about the kind of event. So the user interaction in your system or on your website, in your platform, and so on. So the different kind of events that people are doing. And you want to look in the different kind of order they're doing it, and maybe even want to analyze what kind of order, maybe different orders maybe make a difference on subscribing or in general conversion rates. And so the order is important, the time in between the different kind of steps is important, and maybe even like how often some specific events are happening. So if you're a task management, maybe you find out that, I don't know, if someone creates 10 tasks and set them to done, they're pretty likely to proceed with these kind of tools. So the number of repetitions is important. So different kind of analysis and also like different kind of data, because event data is different. And I really was struggling to do this properly. I mean, it's possible, of course, like to do it with data that is in the star schema. I think it's possible to do it with data that's in Data Vault or whatever kind of other thing. But the effort is quite a lot, and especially in these growth and product use cases, you work on a very high pace because you want to do experimentation. Experimentation is basically what drives growth and product development in this early stage, and you have to get back with answers pretty quickly. And this is also like the reason why tools like Amplitude, Mixpanel, or Post are quite popular, because you can do all these things in there quite quickly. But I mean, yeah, I have all the data in my data warehouse, and I can do other crazy stuff in my data warehouse. So I want to do this on my data warehouse data. I was always on the lookout for something new. I played around a little bit with event log data, basically. Like, so some software services enable you to download the data via the API, and they have big tables with just immutable event logs. And so it's just like all the events that are happening in there with all the different kind of contexts. So if you use, for example, Stripe has an event table. It's massive. So of course, like every event that's happening within your Stripe account, so even like every micro interaction that's happening there is there as an immutable log row. And these rows are huge. I mean, I think in the end they had 800 columns. It's immense because it also saves all the context. I mean, of course, like if you want to work on this table, yeah, good luck to talk to your finance team, because like you will really ramp up your query costs. But I mean, in the end, you can just pick the things that are important for you. But working on this kind of data structure was really like, this was the thing I was looking for. It enabled me to do things really quickly. I always had this in my head, and then I came across Amit, the founder of Narrator AI, and he was writing some stuff on LinkedIn, and I read about it. So he wrote about Activity Schema, so an idea for a different data model that he was developing, and they were using a Narrator to create their BI tool on top of it. So I did a session with him. He walked me through. I think we wanted to do just a short session, but it became pretty long because we had so much stuff to discuss, and it was really like kind of a revelation. And so what is Activity Schema? So Activity Schema, of course, like it's a data model. So you model first before you start to query. So you bring the data in a specific kind of shape, and then you build on top of that. Usually it's like the kind of a data model. But what is different to other ones is like, first of all, you divide everything up into entities. So you break down your business model into different kind of entities. And for each entity, you create one table. It's really simple. So in the end, you have one table for each entity. So you end up maybe, I don't know, with 10 tables, depending on what kind of entities you want to look at. So first step is really like to define your different kind of entities. How do you do that? There are different kind of approaches, and I will definitely make some other videos, but there are already some videos by me. So for example, where I break down in this example, like Airbnb in different kind of business entities. And so this is like the same thing with Activity Schema. So you can use it for tracking, but you can also use it then later to model your data. This is why I also love this kind of approach, because it basically works the way that I already do things on the data collection side. So this, for example, is like my structure that I use internally to analyze my content performance. So I have two entities. One is reach, one is content. Reach is still, we can discuss about that, but it's still at the moment, because I'm still building things up, it's still important to see, okay, how much reach do I gain? It's not really that I work on it, but it gives me some kind of signal. Baseline. And then on content, a lot of stuff happening. So like, and you can see like in orange, these are all like the activities. And this is what you do. I mean, you create a single table for an entity, so in that case, content. And then all the activities goes in there. Content discovered is an activity, content viewed is an activity, and so on. So you put it all in this one table. And this table are pretty small. In the original concept, so they in the end have just 14 fields. And it always has the same structure. It always has a unique identifier for each event. It has a timestamp for each event. It has something they call customer, which I usually call entity, because I don't really like the word customer here. But this is like the business entity. And then there's a specific kind of activity where you basically have it. And then what I really like is like, also like you put the source in. So like, because you define your business entity and you don't start to define where you track things. So first you define how the end thing should look like. And then you can see where you get the data from. So, and it could be like that, for example, content viewed in my case, is coming from at least 5 to 6 sources. So from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from the blog, from the podcast, from live streams, and so on. And I always put the source in it to really say, okay, this is where the data comes from. It's super helpful later in reporting to really know, okay, where originally the data was coming from. And so that's it. So in the end, 14 fields. We have 3-dimensional fields, which are called feature 1, 2, 3. And this is something that you don't really put too much context in it. And then you more like make a decision like either can you get all these different kind of features from other events. So like by doing inner joins and query it. So for example, if I create content, then I could put there the title, the original content ID, and maybe the number of words. And then when I have an event like content viewed for a specific blog post, then I could put other features in there, other dimensions. So maybe, for example, like author or category. But I could then, when I later query it, I could still pull the title and the words from the created events. And so then I can basically build out all the dimensions within one table without joining different kind of tables. I'm still not 100% sure if it really makes sense for me to do it like this, because like these feature columns have some problems, and I will talk in a second. The other way is like just build a typical slow changing dimensional table, like you know from star schema already. So this, I assume, is maybe the better way, maybe not the most performant way. So of course, like this very small table design is built for performance. And of course, like if you start to join things in for reporting again, then you might drop the performance. But it's in the end, it's a decision that you can make. How do you work with that? Well, that's quite nice. I mean, this is like an example from the Activity Schema GitHub repository. And the first two, these are simple, obvious, and you can do this in every kind of data model, I guess, pretty easily. So the first one just counts up the purchased, so how many day passes has been purchased. And the second one is basically how many subscription to a yearly pass has been happening. And so this is like an example for a bike rental shop. And so like you can buy a day pass, and then at some point when you're super happy with everything, you buy a yearly pass. And so you don't have to buy day passes anymore. And so like a simple query, you can just see like, because this is important business metrics, you can see it. And so the second one is more interesting, because this is one where you want to find out how many day passes users in average buy before they subscribe to a yearly pass. Super interesting question, typical growth and product question. Because like this gives you a really good answer how you should really optimize your setup. So if you find out, okay, on average we need 5 day passes. So of course, like you can push then people into maybe do another day pass before you basically offer them a yearly subscription, and you will most likely see conversion rates to yearly subscription or yearly passes go up. And to build this kind of query in another basically data model, this is not an easy task. And here it's quite straightforward. So in the end, you do an inner join because you have both activities in the same table. And then you basically have different kind of criteria. And here you just count them up. A very simple and small query, but a powerful one, and one that you use a lot in product cases. Because like in product, it's really often the question that you have a specific kind of feature and you want to know what is leading to this usage of a feature. So what happening before, or you have a subscription, you want to know what kind of features have been used before, how often. And so this is super easy to build out. So I could extend this now with different more kind of features pretty easily by just adapting the where statement here. That's really nice. It's pretty early, so there are not so many people playing around. I just know 2 or 3 other ones who are basically really going into it, but it gets some attention and people trying out. And this is always like with new approaches, you have to learn the edges. So no approach is so perfect that it can basically do everything perfectly and you don't really have problems. So like each approach has their strengths and their weaknesses. And so for me, it's like really like triggering out what are the kind of weaknesses. And so here are my learnings. When you work with Activity Schema, modeling is really quick and extending is really easy. So because you really define your target model for a specific business entity, and you always have the same structure, so you don't really have to. So the only thing that you have to do is like, you have to prepare the data that it fits into it. And this is usually pretty straightforward. Sometimes, and I have this on the right, sometimes if you have batch data, you have to eventify it. So for example, when I get my data from YouTube, I don't get it in a single event log. I would love to get it, but I don't get it. And so I get daily data. And so I basically have to break down the daily data to simulate events from this kind of batch data to fit in this kind of system. But it's okay. It's straightforward to do that. Sometimes you really have to make sure that you stitch identities so that you make sure if you have different kind of events, for example, for a customer, that they come from different kind of sources. Of course, like you have to invest time to stitch identities, but you have to do it in every kind of model. Another thing is really nice. You don't really need DBT. I still use it because it's often like my kind of standard use case and I know it really well. And I mean, but here I have to orchestrate, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 tables. It's not really much. I could easily build something with Prefect, Dexter, or Airflow on top and could just do it there. So it's not really a need to use DBT. And also, like, because I have so few queries, I usually have really low clock costs because like the whole model runs super quick until it's through. This is really nice. What I also realize is it's like the model is business-based and source agnostic. Which means is like I model basically the entities around how my business works. And then I pick source data and I map the source data to this model. So when I switch from Zendesk to HubSpot as my customer service tool, I'm just switching the source and I just have to then redo the transformation from the new source HubSpot into the same model. But in the end, like the data arrives in the same way. So I can just continue to report on everything. Onboarding takes really low time. So if I show this kind of model to someone new who has a little bit of modeling background or like DBT background, they immediately get how this works because like, yeah, as I said, 8, 10 models and like the core model is always like the same. One of the downsides or problems what I see, so of course, like you have to eventify batch data. You don't have to, of course, like you could also just push the batch data in there and build your reporting around. Right now, I'm basically want to bring everything in the same shape to make it easier downstream that you don't really have to think about, okay, is this batch data, is this event data? But right now, I'm not 100% sure if it's a good approach. Right now, it works quite well. But I'm still praying that we get webhooks or event data from all sources. Please do that. Feature casting, Docmania. These feature 1, 2, 3 is still something where I'm not 100% sure if it's a good idea. I mean, I see the benefit that you really try to limit the width of your table and that you say, okay, 3 is enough and you do the rest. But the problem is that you always have the one feature 1 and then there can different kind of data in there. Of course, like you have to do everything as strings so that everything fits. So in the end, in reporting, you cast a lot. And I always forget what is in feature 1 for content, what is in feature 2, or for this different kind of events. Of course, you have to document well to really understand it. And so I'm not 100% sure. So I might end up that I do a lot more with a dimensional table for each entity, which in the end is not so much. I mean, then I end up with 10 plus table, which are usually slowly changing. And I think the major struggle is really like you have to rethink your queries. And so because like on this model, you work differently. And for me, who was used to do it in a different way, so at the moment it's really like a little bit of reshaping your brain to become quicker and to really see the different kind of use case. And I think this will still take time for me. Is it production ready? What is production ready? I don't know. I think like with data model, we always have the problem that when someone comes up with a new approach, people always put this on a table and say, okay, does this solve everything? Is this the data model for our whole business? It's quite of a hard task to be the one data model for all use cases of your business. I would claim that data models also, like everything else, will in the end come down to use cases. And I don't think that you will have 20 different data models in your data warehouse, but I can definitely see that you might have 2 or 3 different approaches for the different kind of use cases. And so for the typical things that I just described, like product and growth analytics cases, this works really well. I think this is also like what the others that have worked with this discovered. So for these kind of use cases, it worked really well. Does it work super good for the classic business reporting? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't tested it there. I just tested it for this use case and there it worked really well. Would I use it in production? Yes, I would give it a chance. Definitely. So as I said, so at the moment I'm really out there to test the different kind of boundaries of these kind of approach. And I want to see more problems So I don't want to find problems, but problems give me an idea where is an edge and where basically, okay, this works really well, but maybe this is problematic. And so I want to find more of these, because I'm pretty sure that more of these are around there. But so far I haven't found so many, which is a good sign. So, but this is why I'm super bit hesitant to say, okay, go ahead, do everything with that if you want to analyze these things. But I would definitely give it a try. Yeah, so this was the last chart of my talk. So of course, like I was asking questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the comments. Please do. I mean, this is an interesting new thing, and we don't really have a lot of experience with this. And so you might have some questions, because I have plenty of questions around this, which I have to test out. So if you have some, just put them in the comments. And maybe this becomes my next video. We will see. Thank you a lot for your time. And if you want to do more of these kind of stuff, I'm at the moment building a new video platform where, on top of the things that I do on YouTube, I do sessions where we really go into code, where we really construct models, where we basically develop something. And you can just watch over my shoulder how I'm doing this and hear me talking about, okay, why do I decide to do this? And why do I decide to do that? And it's not me only doing it. It's also like I invite other people that I know who have a lot of knowledge in all these things to build something with them together. And to take a specific kind of use case, sit down with them, and they will show how they build it. And I will ask them a lot of questions. Okay, why do you do this? And what is the reason to decide that? And honestly, I'm just building the perfect platform for myself, because this is the way how I love to learn. And I'm missing this in the data world, because it's out there for software development, but it's not really out there for data. So you can go to this kind of website. We also put it in the show notes, and just sign up to get notified when it gets online. So thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope maybe have a look into Activity Schema and try it out yourself.